What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video on the SAT from the Scalar Learning channel. And today we are talking about how to get the process started, how to get going if you're a junior, or even in some cases a sophomore, and you want to figure out where you're at on the SAT. This is how you get going. This is how to take a practice SAT. Let's do it. So before we jump into how exactly we should do this, let me explain why it's so important to take a practice SAT. You want to start by getting a baseline, establishing where you're at, and also thinking about where you need to be, which we're going to talk about later in the video. But it's really important to kind of figure that out right at the beginning. And also important, if you do plan to take the ACT instead, to take a practice SAT, a practice ACT, kind of compare, see which one feels more comfortable for you, and then take it from there. So it's very important to do this, and to do this as early as possible so you can properly gauge how much work you need to reach your target score. So the first thing you're gonna need to do is find a practice test. So where do we find practice tests? And by the way, all these links are gonna be in the description below. So first of all, the first place you can go is to the College Board. They actually have practice tests that you can download and print out on paper, which I recommend because you're gonna actually take this on paper as well. You can print these out and do the practice test there. Another thing you can do if you wanna take these exact same official practice tests, you can do it from Khan Academy and take it online. So if you don't have access to a printer, go to Khan Academy and sign up there, and you can take all the practice tests there right online if that's easier. But I would recommend doing a paper test just so you get the full feel of what it's like to take a real practice SAT. Now, it's a quick caveat, depending on how much time you have and how many practice tests you're able to take, because there's 8 official practice tests that are available here. Just be aware of the fact that the tests have sort of evolved over the last couple of years since these practice tests were first put up. So what I mean is there is some questions that are now appearing, question types that didn't really used to appear before. And I've talked about those in another video, and I'm gonna also put that in the link if you wanna check that out to see some of the changes to the SAT that I've been noticing as I take more and more tests and real tests and all that stuff. So you can check that out. But I would say this is a great place to start if you have the runway and the bandwidth to take all 8 and then move in to some of the official practice tests, or official tests I should say, that have been released since, and they're all available here. So if you have a shorter runway, I would actually jump right in with these officially released tests. So the College Board usually officially releases 3 tests per year. You can find them here on Reddit, and these are all the ones that, again, have been officially released, so it's all good. You're allowed to see them, you're allowed to take them, and I think this is even better, especially if you are pressed for a bit of time. You can start with the 2020 test, and then you've got 2020, 2021, and 2022. You got lots of practice tests there. I think almost 12 if you include the international ones that have been released, plus 3 domestic ones each year. And by the way, the content between the international and domestic are essentially identical. Some people sometimes say the internationals are a little harder, but I don't think that's true. I think from the math standpoint, at least where I really pay attention, it's pretty much the same. So after you find a practice test, next you want to schedule a time to take this test. So let me break down the timing so you know how much of a window you need. So of course we have the reading section first, 65 minutes. Then you want to give yourself a 5-minute break. And this is just so you can kind of mimic what's going to happen on test day. Again, there's going to be some variability depending on the test center, the proctor, etc. But usually they give you about 5-minute break after that first section. Then you're going to dive into the writing section, that's 35 minutes. And then you're going to take a longer break, 10 minutes, go to the bathroom, drink some water, have a snack, whatever. Then you're going to dive into the math no calculator section, that's 25 minutes, another 5-minute break, and then you have your math calculator section, which is 55 minutes. Now, on the real SAT, they're going to have an experimental section, a 5th section at the end. You don't need to take that here. This is just to establish your baseline. So when we add everything up, this adds up to a total of 200 minutes. And when we convert that to hours and minutes, that's 3 hours and 20 minutes. So about 3.5 hours is the window that you'll need. Now, people ask me all the time, hey, well, is it okay if I break it up? I do the reading section today, the writing section tomorrow, expand it out over a few days. You can do that if you have to. I understand the school year has started right now. Things might be busy. So if you have to, fine, do it that way. But it's the best if you can do it all in one sitting, sort of similar to how you would take it on the real day. That's going to give you the best read. So if you can do it, that's how I would recommend it. Next, you need to find a quiet location to take this test. The last thing you want is people talking, interrupting, you hear noises in the house, and that's gonna interrupt you. It's not gonna give you an accurate read and an accurate baseline. So I would recommend either using a quiet room at home, again, without interruption, where people know you're taking the test and they're not gonna come in and bother you. And by the way, to make sure to get a timer of some sort so you can keep track of each section, how much time you have left, all that. You can use a watch as well if you want. You can reserve a room at a public library. I've done this many times, and you can take that room and everybody will leave you alone. It'll be beautiful and quiet and all that stuff. And last but not least, you could use an empty classroom at school. Obviously not during school hours, because that might be tough, and you'll probably have to go to class and all that. But if they might let you stay late on a Friday and take a test. So it's always worthwhile asking if you can't find a place at home. Next, you're gonna take the test. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna print it out and take it. If you want to use the bubble-in sheet, you can, but I'm not so intent on making you do that right out the gate. Now, if you have a very short ramp-up time for the SAT, taken in a week or two, okay, I would do it. But really, it's not so critical to like bubble it in and go through that whole process, because what I've noticed is if you have ample time, eventually the time issue, meaning trying to get everything done and all that within the time frame, it becomes a non-issue with enough practice and with enough rehearsal. This is more on the math side, of course, that I'm talking about. So if you want to, you can do it, and it's a bigger recommendation to do that if you have a shorter time frame, like a couple weeks, and you're trying to take the SAT. So I would say fine, but it's not essential. And make sure to have several pencils and a calculator with you for the calculator math section. Of course, don't use that on the no calculator section, but you bust it out for the final section, section 4. Last but not least, don't bring extra scratch paper. What you're going to use are the actual test pages where the questions are, where the passages are, etc. That's where you're allowed to write and take notes and all that stuff. You're not allowed to bring in extra paper. And once you're done with the test, you want to analyze your results. So of course, you're going to grade the test. There's an answer sheet that is available at the link that I've provided to get those practice tests from the College Board. There's also answer keys on the QAS Reddit page where all these practice tests are available. So you just got to find it and grade it yourself. Then you want to review every incorrect question. You should also go over everything that you guessed on. You're like, oh, I got it right, but I wasn't sure. Let me see why the answer is the answer. Let me see if I can figure that out. Finally, you want to make a study plan based on your target score, and that can be determined based on the college you hope to attend. Now, every college is going to have different sort of thresholds, interquartile ranges, if you will, for what are acceptable SAT and ACT scores. So for example, if you want to go to Georgetown, you want to look on the US News website, okay, and here's the link again, that'll be in the description link below if you just want to click it and go. And you can look at the universities, national universities, and see, okay, this is the range that I want to be in. I want to be at least at this score or max at this score. Try and target that, and then you can see, okay, well, I'm going to probably need a lot of work if I need to bump my score 200, 300, 400 points. Another thing I want to say is that just because, let's say, you score, let's say, a 1,000 on the SAT, that doesn't mean that, oh, well, normally I can only raise it 200 points, so the max I can get is 1,200. That definitely is not true. The baseline is just that. It's a baseline that gives you your starting point, but is not an indication of how far you can progress, because I've seen massive, massive progressions regardless of that starting point. It just might mean you have to refresh a lot of math concepts, you have to tighten up your reading, tighten up your understanding of grammatical rules, etc. So I just want to make sure that's clear. And the last thing I want to say too is, if you go to US News to see the SAT scores, you might have to actually sign up and pay for a subscription to Compass. That's the US News service where you can actually then see all the extra details. But if that's an issue paying for that, ask your college counselor at your high school, ask your school, see if they have a subscription so you can go through and see the scores that you need. That's it. That's all the information you need on how to take a practice SAT. I hope this made a lot of sense, and I hope this answers any questions that you might have had about this process. If you like this video, click that like button, and if you want to see more from the Scalar Learning channel, make sure to click subscribe. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.